Our mission at the school is to teach you, to guide you, to mentor you, to make sure that you go out and become financially independent. Who here would like to be financially independent? What does that mean to some of you folks? Brent, financially independent, what's that mean to you? Right. You have a job? Yes. Okay. So you don't have to depend on anybody. First, where do you work at? Okay. Now, I'm sure you like your job, but you don't want to work for that person your entire life, do you? No, absolutely. We're going to help you change that. And it's going to start right here tonight. Would you like that? Yes, sir. Okay, that's going to happen. Are you tired of your job? Do you want steady, strong cash flow? Do you need cash now? Do you want to increase your net worth? Follow our steps. And actually, what's going to happen is Terrell's in a few minutes is going to get up here and he's going to show you those steps on what we do and how we train people right here in this room for 2 solid days. And that's coming up in about 10 days from now. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. And some other programs that we have. These are just some of the course. I'm just going to go through this, some of the education that we cover in our 2 days. Just some of property evaluation, acquiring a property, property disposition, training of property management, disposal, ideal strategies, becoming a bank. I don't know if you want to become a bank these days, but the thought process is that they've made a lot of money as long as they don't go on these retreats and stuff like that. Anyhow, so we prepare you for immediate success. That's the key, immediate success. Everybody wants immediate success, and we're going to get you there. Advice on beginning your quest, even if you are a veteran. Even if you are a veteran. It's not free. The 2-day course is not free. And we'll talk a little bit about this a little later. One of the things that I like to pride myself on is that this 300-page resource guide, which no one else has, this is information for real estate investors exclusively for South Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, and the tri-state area. Here's my first deal. Let me tell you about my first deal. I'm going to shorten it up because I've got to get Terrell on here. As you know, I work for the city of Philadelphia, and I said, you know what? I'm going to make this work. And I'm going to go out and buy some properties. Didn't know what I was doing, didn't know how, but what I did was buy a whole bunch of CDs, and actually they didn't have CDs, they were tapes back then. I think some of them were actually 8-tracks. But at any rate, so I got that and started putting a lot of positive information into my head. Still do it on a daily basis. People like Norman Vincent Peale, Zig Ziglar, all of the greats. I still do it on a daily basis. On a daily basis. It's what you put in here that really comes out here. Does that make sense to you folks? Okay. I still do it, started doing it then. I never forget standing in the unemployment line. I had my tape recorder here, my earphones on, and the gentleman behind me said, "What are you listening to, some rock and roll music?" And I said, "No, I'm listening to Zig Ziglar." He says, "Oh, Zig Ziglar, he's that motivational guy." I said, "Yeah." I said, "You ain't going to be in this line long then, are you?" I said, "Nope, that's right." And he was right. Probably a week or so later, I said, "You know what? I'm not going to collect any more unemployment," because I went out and did my first deal. So I'm going to tell you about how I did my first deal and how it worked. I wanted to get involved in sheriff sales and tax sales in Philadelphia. Now they have a unique system. I've taught all over the country, literally all over the world, including London and places like that. And nowhere did I have anything like the city of Philadelphia, where you have a tax sale and you put down a minimum deposit. Now back then, the minimum deposit was $300. So if you got the property, you could put down $300 and actually walk away with ownership of that property. But it was 10% or $300, whichever was higher. So what I decided to do was go down into an area that I could afford, which was a really posh area called Kensington. Anybody know what Kensington is? Okay. It's not a real posh area. Anyway, in case you're not familiar with it. So I got my list and I said, okay, let me go down to this property. Now the property was located, which was, there was a factory here, there's a lot here, and the property was located there. Oh, by the way, next to the factory and the lot was a dirt road. And this is going to become important in a minute. So I got the address, 2133 Trenton Avenue. So I said, okay, let me go down I went and knocked on the door. The guy answers the door and he says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Well, I understand his property may be up for sale." I didn't want to tell him it was up for tax. So he says, kind of scratches his head and he says, "Well, I lease you, and I didn't know it was up for sale. Come on in and, be glad to show you around." And we got pretty friendly. We started talking about investing in the neighborhood. We got even more friendly when he invited me downstairs to his recreation room where he had a pool table and a beer meister. So we were talking for a couple hours about real estate investing, and then I said, "Are you going to rent this to me when you buy the property?" He said, "Oh yeah, absolutely." So I didn't tell him it was up for tax sale. So I went a couple days later to the tax sale auction, and the auctioneer said 2133 Trenton Avenue, and he bids. And I jumped up and I said $300. That was the opening bid. Today it's $600. So it was $300, and the auctioneer said $300 once, $300 twice. No. Somebody else jumped up and they said $400. I said $500. They said $600. I said $700. They said $800. I said $4,000. I screamed it out. Well, this guy that was bidding against me sat down and he had lead in his pants. Bang! He goes down, and you can see me shake. Every time I tell that story, I must have told it 1,000 times. I start shaking because I'm there. Okay, so the auctioneer says $4,000 once, twice, sold to the man in the back for $4,000. I figured the property's worth about 20 grand, even 15. If I could flip it out and make some money, that's great. Pay some bills. I go running down the aisle. Cash is coming out of my pocket because I got to put down my 10%. People are shoving it back in my pocket. I go down there and I can hold my hand because it's shaking so much to sign the receipt. Grabbed the receipt, ran to the back of the room. Couldn't wait to go out and start collecting my rent. And I have been telling my bride for a few days that we were going to become millionaires in real estate. I was going to surprise her with it. And I'm going, I am so excited. I don't even remember what happened to the rest of the auction. The auction was all of a sudden over. And the guy that was bidding against me came over to me and shook my hand and he said, "You've been here a couple of times." I said, "Yep." And he said, "You haven't bought anything yet?" I said, "Nope." And he said, "I'm just curious, I bid against you." And I said, "Yeah, I thought you did." And he said, "I'm just curious, what are you going to do with that empty lot?" And I looked at him and kind of gulped. And I said, "Empty lot?" And he says, "Yeah, the empty lot that you just bought." And so I said, "Well," and I kind of started stumbling around. And I said, "Well, what were you going to do with it?" He says, "I don't know. Must have been worth something. You were really big money." So then I went over to the recorder of deeds office and looked up the property I just bought. And found out it wasn't this house over here that I was in that had the beer, but it was this empty lot. So I then went out to my lot and said, "What am I going to do with this?" Well, I said, "Maybe this guy in the factory would like to buy it." So I went and knocked on the door. The door was all the way over here. I walk on this dirt road. By the way, the address of the property, 2133 Trenton Avenue, this is Trenton Avenue. This is not Trenton Avenue. This is Witt Street, like in Halfwit, spelled W-I-T-T. Go look at it. Anyhow, so a young kid answers the door, 17, 18 years old. And he said, "Can I help you?" And I says, "Yeah, I just bought this lot